Aram-Damascus was an Aramean state around Damascus in Syria, from the late 12th century BCE to 732 BCE. Sources for this state come from texts that can be divided into three categories: Assyrian annals, Aramean texts, and the Hebrew Bible. The largest portion of the textual sources come from Assyria. There are, however, often several copies of the same texts. Most of the texts are annals from the Assyrian kings Shalmaneser III, Adad-nirari III, and Tiglath-Pileser III. The texts mention Aram-Damascus from an Assyrian perspective, but are in many ways informative of the strength of the state, and give us several names of its rulers. Aramean royal inscriptions are rare, and only one royal stela from Aram-Damascus proper has been identified, the Tel Dan stela. Other sources in Aramaic that shed light on the history of Aram-Damascus include two Booty inscriptions from Eritrea and Samos, and the Zakur stela of the king Zakur. The Hebrew Bible gives more detailed accounts of Aram-Damascus' history, mainly in its interaction with Israel. For instance, there are texts of the Bible mentioning David's battles against Arameans in southern Syria in the 10th century BCE. In contrast, the sources for the early history of Aram-Damascus are almost non-existent. In an annal dating to Tiglath-Pileser I, we learn that Aramean people have begun settling in the southern half of Syria. The first reliable data can be found in the 9th century BCE, when Aramean, Assyrian, and Hebrew texts all mention a state with its capital in Damascus. The state seems to have reached its peak in the late 9th century BCE under Hazael, who, according to Assyrian texts, fought against the Assyrians, and according to Aramean texts, had some influence over the North Syrian state Unki, and according to Hebrew texts, conquered all of Israel. To the southwest, Aram-Damascus reached over most of Golan to the Sea of Galilee. In the 8th century BCE, Rezin had been a tributary of Tiglath-Pileser III, the king of Assyria. In c. 732 BCE, he allied himself with Pekah, the king of Israel, to attack Ahaz, the king of Judah. However, Ahaz appealed to Tiglath-Pileser III for help. This the Assyrian king obliged, after Judah paid tribute to the Assyrian king. As a result, Tiglath-Pileser III sacked Damascus and annexed Aram. According to 2 Kings chapter 16 verse 9, the population was deported and Rezin executed. Tiglath-Pileser also records this act in one of his inscriptions. Archaeological evidence of Aram-Damascus is close to nothing. Excavations in Damascus are hard to perform, owing to the continuous settlement of the city. Other cities of Aram-Damascus have not been positively identified from textual sources, and excavations of Iron Age sites around Damascus are almost non-existent. The material culture at sites farther south do not show many features distinguishing from the material culture of ancient northern Israel. Kings: Hadadezer 880-842 BC, Hazael 842–805 or 796 BC, Ben-Hadad III 796–792 BC, Rezin